Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm making a baby onesie for my cousin, his wife, and their new baby. They just had a baby in February, so I made this onesie for them and a little matching bandana for their dog. A little bit on that pattern, you can actually get it in the description box below, but I made it myself on Adobe Photoshop. If there's enough likes and things and comments, I'll show y'all how to do that. Also, shout out to Spoonflower. They're the company that printed out my designs. So, don't forget to like and subscribe, leave a comment, and let's get to it. To get started, here are some of the supplies that you'll need. I have fabric in 2 colors, or patterns in this case. I have pins. I have the sewing pattern from Spoonflower, which I will link below, and snaps and a little snap kit that I will teach you how to use. So right now what I'm doing is I'm trimming down the patterns to the size fitting how big I want to make it, which is going to be for in the future when the baby is about 1. Usually I'll say, oh, trace it onto something before you just cut it, but I don't typically work with children's wear, so I figured it'd be okay. So I'm just showing you that there are different lines depending on which age, and So right now what I'm doing is I'm finally cutting out the fabric, and I'm showing you that you want to, if it's marked like that, you want to cut it on the fold. So I'm just making sure that I'll get a mirrored side. And it's typical to have it be right sides together, meaning that the pattern side that would be outward would face inward just for the cut and stuff. But sometimes when I sew, I get a little carried away, and so I ended up not doing that. It'll work just as well. It's just typically we do it backwards from how I'm doing it, just in case we make marks and things. You can see that I'm pinning down the pattern right now. And yeah, that's pretty much what's going on. So I'm going to speed it up after this point for y'all, and then I'll walk you through the next step. So on the sleeve, you're going to want to cut 2 pieces. I just put it over next to the on-fold pieces, but just so you know. And right now I'm pointing out the notches, and I'm just going to make a few quick cuts there. It'll make it easier to assemble later. So now I'm cutting out the binding. The Spoonflower pattern does it in a way that's a little different, but it's actually a lot easier than the traditional way. And I'm just trying to find the perfect placement for these. This yellow shirt, I'm upcycling actually, and I got this from the thrift store and then immediately washed it, obviously. I just thought the yellow would make a neat contrast. So now that I have everything cut out, I'm just taking the binding and matching it up as per the instructions. So I believe this is the neck and shoulder. I can't tell if it's the front or the back. I think it's the front. Yeah, it's the front. So I'm just matching up that front, making sure that the notches match. You want one layer before you sew, and then I'm going to take it back and then sew again. But I'll show you that. So this is just laying out all the binding, and then I'm going to pin it into place and head to the sewing machine to finish that off. One more thing is that you can see there are two separate pieces, one for each side. So here it is, all pinned together the first time. You can see I'm just going to run a stitch over where it's pinned together, and then we'll go from there. So I also did the same thing on the front. That way I'm only having to pin the one time. So because the binding technique is a little bit new to me, I mess up a bit here. It's not something irreversible or horrible. It's just that I clipped somewhere that didn't necessarily have to be clipped. You'll see I'll kind of direct you in a side edge, and I'm going to cut, yeah. So I'm going to cut the seam allowance here. Don't do this. I mean, it didn't hurt me so much. It didn't look as nice as it could have, and it's because I cut it. Don't bother with it. So now I'm just going around, and I'm flipping the facing so that when I top stitch over this, the stitch will catch both sides. You're seeing how I'm running my finger over it. It's hard to explain, but you have the visual here, so hopefully that'll help. It's just to finish that binding off, and make it so that that's not a raw edge. You kind of tuck it in. And that's easier to do if you don't cut the seam allowance, but you can still do it if you do. It just doesn't look as thick and healthy. I know healthy is a weird way to describe it, but it looks more full if you don't cut it. And you can see where I'm just folding over and pinning to keep that in place. And if you have to do it again, I think I had to do it a couple of times, then that's fine. Just unpin it and fold it over again until it looks right to you. So here I'm about to start sewing, and I'm showing you how the binding should look from the side. I think this is a good guide to help you visually. And I'll also link below in the description when they did it on Spoonflower. that video was a really good reference for me. So if you want to check that out while you're working as well, I would encourage that. Not relevant to the vid, but I think it's really funny. Wait for it. Almost there. And bam! My camera took a tumble. Haha, classic. So you see how that binding stretches and makes room for the baby to move around. Now this part I had a lot of trouble on. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep this in the final video, but if I am, hi everyone. It's just weird from an adult designer point of view to have your shoulders overlap in this way. And I felt like the video was a little bit too brief. The reference video that I used was a little bit too brief to really touch on how exactly you match the notches up. And I'll show you the correct way later in the video. In fact, I think I'll just cut it here and fast forward to me figuring it out. I don't want to put y'all through all the torture of watching this, but that did take me a little bit to figure out. Alright, longer than I'm willing to admit later, I figured out how it goes, and I'll show you a little bit on the camera, but basically the binding matches with the notches, which was not how I was expecting it to go, but there it is, all pinned together and ready to just go through a zigzag stitch on my sewing machine. By the way, all of these are zigzag stitches. The binding is just a thinner zigzag. So now that we have that pinned in place, we're just going to pin the sleeve on top of that so that it kind of sandwiches the two layers of the bodice together with the sleeve kind of on top. I'm just doing the same thing to the other side. But because it was so complicated for me to figure out, I'm letting y'all see it twice and with a cross section. Just hopefully that'll help you figure it out a little faster than I did. Alright, now that all that is sewn together, all that's left to do is close up the side seams, including the sides of the sleeves, and then put the buttons in, and we'll be all done. Right now, I'm just clipping the seam allowance on this one, this raw edge where the sleeve goes, which is fine to do, just be very careful not to cut through several layers and into your fabric. When I first started sewing, I did that a couple of times. Thankfully, lesson learned, but with those big honking scissors, I'm surprised I didn't do it again. So just be careful when you're doing that. And I'm about to set it up right sides together to seal the whole thing closed. And again, that'll just be your standard zigzag stitch. Forgot a step there, guys, sorry. Here I'm marking how I want to do the cuff of the sleeves. And I'm just measuring in a couple of centimeters. I believe it was 2 centimeters, maybe 4. There's instructions in the Onesie website. I'm just marking it with a piece of chalk, and I'm going to fold it over and do a very thin zigzag stitch. A double needle would look great too. Just either one you prefer. So now we're putting the snaps in. And we want the back to go on top of the front. And you can see where I've made 3 marks on the inside back and the inside of the front. Figuring out the snap itself was really hard because I kept putting the male side inside out. So I'll skip through all that with y'all and just show you how I did it when I did it correctly. Here are the instructions that came with the kit. They're garbage. Just do what I'll do when I do it right. Here is it after much trial and error. You can see that I've finally gotten it down. I have the back part done. So as you can see, nothing's falling out with that. The male side has to go up and be facing outside of the pliers. Let's see if I got this right. And you want the male side on the puffins part and the smooth side on the bottom because the back goes over the front. It'll make sense as a visual when I'm done. And how you can tell that you've done it right is that the metal gets stuck in the pliers just a little bit, so you have to take the plastic out and take it apart. Yep, so again, there it is. And I'm just making sure that I'm on the chalk line and going at it again. And I tried, even with my practice rounds, I tried to use a color that I didn't like for my practice so that the real ones can be that periwinkle color and I'm not using up ones that I want. Yep, that seemed to be it, and that seemed to work. I'm going to let you guys see it at a normal speed and continue like this just so that you really get it. Since I got the hang of that, and the shoulders were doing something I didn't really love, I decided to put little clips on the shoulders as well, just to keep them in place. And now for the matching doggy bandana. Okay, so first what you're going to want to do is create a triangular shape, but you only need half of the triangle down the center from the pointy bit to the straight edge. And you're also going to want to add some space at the top because you're going to be taking that top and folding it over a couple of times so that it can thread through the collar. I made the size in a way that the size didn't matter because it threads through the collar. I decided to cut the back in yellow and the front in the matching fabric. That way it can just be completely matching with the baby's onesie. Now here's where I messed up a little because I should have just sewn the whole thing together and left two gaps, one on each side. But instead I didn't do that. You'll see how I saved it though, and it still works. Before I started sewing along where the pins were, I just folded it over at the top twice to make the opening where the color can be slid through. So this is where I realized that I screwed it up, because you can see it's just open at the top and it's got two places where you can slide the color through. I ended up just doing a top stitch at the very top between all those layers, and then sewing each of the little individual pockets closed.
Here it is. A little baby outfit and a matching bandana that slides on the collar for their dog.
Anyway, guys, I had such a good time working on this. I hope y'all liked it and can replicate the projects for yourselves. Please like and subscribe. You know, I'm a new channel, so it would mean a lot to have those new subscriptions. So, I will see you next time. Until then, happy sewing!